Former President Olusegun Obasanjo don't call for the sacking of INEC chairman Mahmoud Yakubu. Olusegun they give order to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to sack INEC chairman Mahmoud Yakubu with immediate effect. Say Yakubu don't spoil the electoral process of this country. Meanwhile, Obasanjo don't come under criticism now because he do pass what Tinubu they do now. You understand? During Obasanjo's time as president, I see this small then, but I still get more sense then. Almost all the states for the country now PDP. You understand? Now he teach Tinubu work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yobosa, for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Let's quickly look at the papers. We begin with this day, run through some of the stories. Financial Times is reporting that Dangote is seeking bank funding to boost crude supplies to his $20 billion refinery. World Trade Organization urges Nigeria to review customs procedures at ports, knocks high rate of physical inspection. To reinforce ties, Nigeria, India seek more pacts on security, economy, defense, and others. In the yellow window there, INEC declares APC's Ayedatiwa winner of Ondo poll. Party declares all 18 local government areas. Tinubu, Buhari, Ganduje, Barrel, APC others great winner. How Sanwo-Olu's leadership paved way for victory, says that story. But the big story on the front page this morning is election integrity. Obasanjo calls for new credible INEC leadership. And of course, the leading photograph is that of President Bola Tinubu and Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, during his historic visit to the country yesterday and wearing his Medal of Honor, which was granted to him by President Bola Tinubu, the GCON. Dr. Yobosa, let's begin with what the former President Obasanjo is saying. He was speaking far away in the U.S. I believe it was at the Chinua Achebe Leadership Forum at the Yale University yesterday. He touched on almost every sector, but particularly the process that brings people into power, the election. He says Nigerians must, as a matter of urgency, ensure that credible people are appointed into the electoral body. He talked about the president's policies, calling him Baba Go Slow. Talked about the judiciary, saying it's now for the highest bidder. Your take?
Well, I think we should forget about the messages and look at the message. I want to believe that former President Olusegun Obasanjo is saying the right thing. In the last few years, there have been issues around our general election, not just at the federal level, but even at the state level. Of course, recently we've seen the outcome of elections at the local government level conducted by the state government. And now you also have the federal elections, especially the last general elections that generated the huge controversy. Yes, one will agree with Obasanjo that there's need for us to reform our electoral process, make it more credible, because if going by the last election in Edo State and Ondo State during the week, you discover that on a day after day, people are losing interest in our electoral process. In Edo election, for example, less than about 23% participated in that elections. For me, that was a setback for us. Even in Ondo State during the weekend, it was almost the same thing. But let's look at the message. Is Obasanjo in a position to teach us how to reform our electoral process? You recall when Obasanjo was in power, he's talking about state capture. Yes. Obasanjo was like an emperor when he was the president of Nigeria. I remember in 2023 general elections when he was coming back for the second term. I'm sure you are aware of how he captured the entire Southwest from the Alliance for Democracy, and except only Lagos, where he was resisted by the current president, where he was the governor of Lagos State. We witnessed lawlessness under General Obasanjo as president of Nigeria. We witnessed a situation where Obasanjo instigated about 3 or 4 House members of Assembly to impeach governors. So like I said, I said we should look at the message, not the messenger. But if we are going to look at the messenger, Obasanjo lacked the credibility, lacked the moral conscience to teach us what democracy is all about, because he was worse than the present government when he was in power.
I think I'll take your word or your phrase on let's not look at the message, but let's not look at the messenger, but the message, because as you know, Change is the only thing permanent, and people can repent.
You're
But the
right.
most important thing really is the statement he has made concerning our elections and the people that run it, and where we are today as it concerns cost of living, as it concerns the judiciary. These are more or less facts that nobody can deny. But let's move from this day to the Punch, its lead story. Ahead of Tiwa's victory, INEC PDP disagree over alleged fraud in under poll. Opposition says election worst in history. INEC APC defend results. Tinubu governors hail Ayeda Tiwa. Some other stories before we come back to that lead. Abiodun Adebu to clash as APC clears Ogun LG seats. 3,767 killed in 9-month road crashes FR as the Mpox vaccination begins in 7 states today. And some other stories. What's happening? Some other stories, just give me a moment there. All right, well, let's go back to the issue with the election. Opposition seems to, that seems to be the norm. Opposition cries when they lose, but would you say there is meat in what they're saying, you know, that election was worst in history? By the way, APC won by almost 3 times the vote of PDP.
Well, if you ask me, I would say that I'm not surprised about the outcome of that election, even though there were reported cases of vote buying by all parties who participated, all parties that participated in that elections. But if you look at the state, Ondo State, is hugely dominated by the APC. The PDP is very disorganized, both at the federal level and at the state level. And so I'm not sure they're quite prepared for this election. And the same thing with the Labour Party. Those are the 2 major political parties that contested this election with the APC, even though there were about 11 political parties that participated in that election. But if you ask the people in Ondo State, and they will tell you that many of them were not surprised by the outcome of the election. The APC was on ground, coupled with the fact that they had the resources. We're told that they will improve on what happened in Edo State in terms of vote buyings by all the political parties. But by and large, I think I want to believe that the APC is on ground, and because the PDP lacked the organizational structures for now, both at the state and the federal level, so they could not compete favorably with APC. So I'm not surprised about the outcome of that elections, even though there are incidents of vote buying and other pockets of violence here and there.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on now to The Guardian very quickly. The big story this morning in front of The Guardian, Nigeria. Leveraging shared history, Nigeria, India to expand $7.9 billion trade ties. The picture of both leaders from both nations make the front page. Cut stops NBC from imposing fines, threatening broadcast stations. How double-digit interest rates scuttled local vehicle acquisition. Utah spending supply disruption to push inflation up 34.45% this month. House meets Tinubu's team on tax reform bills. Ayedatiwa retains seat as Tinubu tells PDP others go to court. Let's quickly touch on the historic visit of the Prime Minister Modi yesterday to Nigeria. Both leaders have now arrived Rio de Janeiro for the G20 summit of the leaders. Dr. Yobasa, what do you take out of this visit? It's the first time in 17 years and the 4th Indian Prime Minister since ties were established many decades ago.
But I think the visit of the Indian Prime Minister to Nigeria is very strategic at this time. Don't forget that a few years back, India also had the similar challenges that we're currently facing today. The poverty was very high, unemployment was very high, and today there was that deliberate move by the Indian, the deliberate and sustained move by the Indian to solve their problem. And today, the economy is booming. As of today, the Indian is the highest exporter of rice to many parts of the world. Technologies, they are moving very fast, and agriculture, they are moving very fast, So I think there are things we need to learn from India. And now that they are here, I think there should be that genuine conversation, pragmatic conversations between Nigeria and India. Let's see if we can have a common ground to collaborate in terms of technological development, agriculture, and other sectors, healthcare and what have you. But I think we have a history of collaboration with India, who also had similar challenges many years ago that we are currently facing. So we have things to learn from them. I'm sure the government will capitalize on that to have a robust discussion with India.
The question is, would we learn? We watch and see how that plays out. The New Telegraph. Still on the Ondo Guber election, we've treated that. EPZs attract $30 billion investments, pay $650 billion to FGCB and letters of credit payments for 52.5% to $506.06 million. And then just below the picture of the celebration of APC and their winning in Ondo State. Court stops embassy from threatening, imposing fines on media houses. I think I'd like you, this is your forte. What do you make of, I learned that this judgment was handed down in June. What do you make of this particular judgment from the court? Do you think it will help? Or do you see media organizations, letting loose and not verifying, or how do you balance this? How do you see this judgment from the court?
For us, I think this is a step forward. You remember some time ago, the Nigerian Guild of Editors and SERAP also went to court to also challenge the NBC's role in sanctioning media houses, in imposing fine and all that. And we felt it was illegal. So we went to court and we got a court order restraining them, pending the determinations of the suit. But I want to believe that this is just a step forward, because it has been the positions of the Nigerian Guild of Editors and other stakeholders in the industry that the NBC cannot be the police, the investigators and the judge at the same time. And because what they are doing is usurping the constitutional responsibility of the judiciary. So if you are a regulating agency, all you need to do is to employ moral suasions and see how you can whip those you think that are not acting professionally within the industry. But for you to rely on complaints by the government or by the Minister of Information, to issue query, you investigate, and at the end of the day, you also impose fine. And we felt it was illegal, and there was need for us to call the NBC to order. And that was why the Nigerian Guild of Editors and SERAP went to court to challenge that. In democracy, I think we should employ technologies, to see how we can regulate some of these things, rather than using NBC as another source of income. We've seen several radio and television stations who were fined 5 million, 10 million, and all that, especially within this current very harsh economic policies, where radio and television are struggling to survive, and you're also imposing fine. And we believe that there should be an independent institutions. Whenever there's a complaint against radio and television stations, we believe that we should have an independent body that will investigate the matter, and at the end of the day, find out whether they should also be given opportunity to also reply. In most cases where they issue this query, they don't have opportunity to reply, to even interrogate the issue before they issue fine. So we believe that NBC was usurping the constitutional responsibility of the judiciaries, and we felt it was illegal, and the Nigerian Guild of Editors went to court. This time around, the judgment was given, I think it was around, this judgment is not new, I think it was given around June or July.
Yes.
Okay, June. So for us, I think it's a victory for the broadcast industry, and this recklessness on the part of the NBC. They are regulating the agencies, but they must do it within the act setting of the NBC.
And be to the Lord.
Yeah. Well, it's good that the papers are reporting it this morning, perhaps reminding the NBC, should they have forgotten, because a couple of papers are running that story this morning, Dr. Wagari. Yeah. Let's move to the foreign papers and begin with the Daily Graphic in Ghana. We're counting days to the elections there, but the Daily Graphic has carried out a poll, And they say that majority of the voters say they will vote on policies, that is manifestos. In fact, the poll shows that about 66.6% said yes, that they will vote because of what the candidates are promising in their manifestos, as against the 33.4% that says they really don't care about what's on the manifesto, they will just vote. This is interesting, particularly when we've seen polls in recent times in some other countries that say, you know, voters really don't care because these manifestos are not abided by the contestants when they get into power. But here we have in Ghana, this poll, well, it's just one poll by the paper that says a lot of voters are concerned about what the politicians are promising them. Dr. Yubasa.
Well, not in so many countries. There are so many countries where politicians promise people. And at the end of the day, they when it comes to implementing those policies, they go by what they promise the people. And we've seen that in the UK. We've also seen that recently in the US, in spite of the bashing of Donald Trump by so many newspapers, you know, trying to you know, expose his bad behavior, his past. The Americans were not bothered about that. Mm-hmm. They were looking at what can Donald Trump bring to the table. I mean, they remember that when he was the president, the economy was very good, and so it was on the basis of that they voted for Donald Trump. Even though some people believe that Donald Trump posed a serious threat to the entire world, but they were not bothered about whether Donald Trump was convicted or Donald Trump was a rapist or all that. They were bothered about what was the state of the economy when Donald Trump was the president of America, and what was the state of the economy during Biden. So I think by the time they reflected on that, and they believed that Donald Trump was the best, and they voted for him. So in Ghana, I'm also happy that they're also looking at policies, not whipping up religious or ethnic sentiment or where you come from, unlike what we normally witness in Nigeria. When election is coming up, people believe that they should whip up ethnic or religious sentiment, where you come from and all that. So I think in every democracy, electorate should focus on what the person is capable of doing. Yeah. Addressing economic, addressing health issues, addressing other security issues, and food insecurity. I think that's what matters. I'm happy that Ghana is focusing on that.
Yeah, one would say that's quite exhilarating, especially when you think about the fact that in Nigeria you have 150 days for political parties to campaign, but they have said that they prefer what gets them the votes is inducements, so they reduced it to even less than 1 month. So it's interesting that in Ghana, 66%, I mean, which is big, yeah. You know, you're talking manifesto. All right, let's look at the citizen. We just have about 5 minutes. Let me die in peace. This is a question of what you call assisted suicide or euthanasia. You know, which is people wanting to take their lives both for themselves and the loved ones. And the NGO's Joseph Raimondo says, but where do you draw the line? Another expert is asking the social implications and what have you. What do you think? What's your sense of this? It's not only in South Africa now. I mean, we've read papers across the globe, yes, where people are talking about assisted dying. What's your sense of this particular talk, Adam?
Well, depending on the setting, the culture, the religious, and what have you. But I know that in Nigeria here, do we have that policies? We don't have that policy because of our culture, because of where we are coming from.
It's not even been accepted yet in the world. I mean, people are begging for it, actually.
Yeah. But if you look at certain situations, you want to believe that sometimes it's good to just follow that procedures rather than, you know, stay a very long time, you know, suffering at the end of the day, people wasting their money to take care of you. So there are some people who just believe that, look, let me just die in peace rather than have this prolonged illness, you know, that at the end of the day, that will not be resolved.
It's an interesting conversation. The debate is, where do we draw the line? People are not coerced and forced to take their own lives. Very quickly, let's run through some of the other international front pages, and then we'll talk on one topic. Yep. Financial Times this morning, the news that President Joe Biden is to allow Ukraine to use long-range American-supplied missiles to strike inside Russia makes the front page of the Financial Times. Likewise, the Telegraph, Biden gives the green light for strikes in Russia. The international hunt for a man whose wife was found in the booth of a car in East London makes the front of the Daily Mirror. The Express leads with warnings from farmers that Labour's controversial inheritance tax plans from the budget is a threat to UK's food security. The Eye reports that Keir Starmer is being urged by business leaders to get as close to the EU as possible to boost the UK economy in what's being called a Brexit reset. The Times also said the PM is trying to forge a stronger relationship with China. Let's talk about the big story in the Financial Times and a couple of papers this morning. Dr. Wagari is also on the front page of The Guardian. US now promising or now allowing for Ukraine to use its own missiles to strike Russia. It's a belated gesture. If you recall how long this has taken them, the $16 billion promised, and that allowed Russia to bombard Ukraine and take some territory. Now Joe Biden, 2 months to leave in office, says, okay, I'm giving the green light. Nevertheless, it's a boost for Ukraine's defense. But what do you make of the story?
Absolutely, I agree. I agree that it's a boost for Ukraine. When you take into consideration what Russia has done to Ukraine in the last
few Trump's coming.
Yeah, with Trump's coming, who said that, look, he would emphasize the crisis and what have you. But if you look at the implication of what Biden did just yesterday, even though there has been no official report, or confirmation from the White House, is that decision is capable of escalating the crisis. And you can rest assured that Russia and its ally will also respond. So at the end of the day, and you ask yourself, what is the essence of all this? But I think there's need for them to find a common way to resolve some of these issues. What is happening in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine? What is happening between Palestinians and Israel? There's a war that has claimed so many lives, innocent life for that matter, and for me is uncalled for. If you go to war, at the end of the day, you still come to the table to resolve the problem. But I think they should find a way to resolve some of these problems.
I think he just said it all. Most times you find out it's ego tripping, and then people are dying unnecessarily, children particularly, and women. Thank you so much, Yoboso Wugaren, the state editor here in the capital Abuja. That's it.
Now, Tinubu do wetin he teach and pass and he does the verse. Why? Why you go the verse? Now you teach this guy work. As you teach him work, you don't want to make he go practice. Meanwhile, PDP don't they reject the outcome of Ondo governorship election. The blacks they don't they plan to go court too. You understand? That they claim saying the process was not transparent. Say the first crack come and say the INEC reg when they send go there go to conduct the election. Say the woman no go dey free and fair. Say na APC bidding go do. But this matter gas the baby because APC clear 18 all over 18 local government area for the state. No be say he win anymore. He win the 18 local government area for the state. So this matter will gas a bit. For me, it go dey difficult to convince me say APC ring that election for Ondo State.